Hi, I'm Heyzeus, and this is the myth of the Icarus Fell, the skin that flew too close to the sun. And I'm going to have a look at what the background to the artwork on it is, because that's an interesting little story on its own. And I'm also going to have a look at its history as a skin and see if history has any ironies to serve up. Also, I'm giving away a factory new USPS Neo Noir. Check the link in the description below if you want to enter. Otherwise, we can get started. On May 26, 2015, Valve brought out Operation Bloodhound, and with it they released the three most recent sets of Valve-designed weapons: the Chop Shop Collection, the Rising Sun Collection, and the Gods and Monsters Collection. These were a hit at the time, and some of them are still quite popular today. Iconic weapons like the Orc Medusa, second only to the Dragon Lore, and the M4A4 Poseidon, second only to the How for M4A4 skins, and other relatively popular skins like the Hydroponic and the M4A1S Hot Rod. But there's one skin here that stands out to me in particular. It's a restricted skin and demanded an almost unprecedented price: the M4A1S Icarus Fell. At one point it looked like it was going to be worth more than $200, and a price point like that for a restricted skin has only really been seen anywhere else with the Glock Fade, which is an ancient skin from the Assault Collection. So this is a crazy price for a skin at its tier of rarity. But since then, its fortunes have taken a turn for the worse. In more than one way, it flew too close to the sun. And this is its story. The Icarus Fell's immense popularity when it was first released is fairly easy to understand. The skin has a striking blue colour pattern, it mixes well with a lot of stickers, and when it was first released, the M4A1S was used almost exclusively as the CT rifle. Even today, it's still sold at fairly impressive rates for something at its price point, and a quick YouTube search shows that there's tons and tons of trade-up videos on this skin. There was a lot of interest in it. Despite that, it's not obvious just by looking at it what it's supposed to represent. Skins like the Medusa and Poseidon display their inspiration very clearly, while as the Icarus Fell doesn't. You could probably guess the name of the Medusa or the Poseidon just by looking at them. You can't do that with the Icarus Fell. But that's okay, because we know what the name of this skin is, and we know it comes from a collection where all the different skins are based on Greek mythology. So we're going to do a little bit of digging and figure out who Icarus was and what he did to inspire this skin. We're actually going to start with his dad, a guy called Daedalus. Now, Daedalus was a fairly interesting guy. He was a famous craftsman of Greek legend. When the wife of King Minos of Crete, I've probably mangled both of those words, but anyway, when this guy's wife gave birth to a baby Minotaur, fathered by a bull, it's a long story, but anyway, she gave birth to a Minotaur, and all was going well until the Minotaur started eating people. Personally, I find this aspect of the story, quite unsettling, because we all know that bulls are herbivores, so if the Minotaur's eating people, it must be the human part that was responsible. But, cannibalism shows up in many cultures across the world, so who am I to judge? But either way, this was a bit of a problem for King Minos, because there's a man-eating Minotaur living in his palace, not good when you're having friends around, so he needed to do something about it. So he went off, had a bit of a consultation with the gods, and after getting a bit of advice, came back and got Daedalus to build a labyrinth, an inescapable labyrinth, and he stuck the Minotaur inside it. This would backfire on Daedalus though, because Minos decided to have Daedalus and his son Icarus imprisoned, and I've come across a couple of different versions of why, and we'll just say that Minos wanted to suppress public knowledge about the labyrinth, and obviously Crete is an island. To leave it you need to travel by sea, and Minos was making sure every single boat was carefully searched so Daedalus and Icarus weren't on board. Daedalus decided to improvise. What he did was he made wings out of wax and feathers for him and Icarus. And, amazingly, it worked. Sort of. You see, these wings had a bit of a problem. If you fly too close to the sun with them, they'll start to melt, or the feathers will fall out, and you'd fall into the ocean. If you got too close to the ocean, on the other hand, they'd get waterlogged, and you'd also fall out of the sky. So you had to keep sort of an altitude in between the two extremes. Now, for Daedalus, this wasn't a problem. He was a sensible grown-up man, and he wanted out. The wings were just a means to an end. They were going to get him the hell off Crete, so he kept the right altitude and made his way to Sicily. As for Icarus though, well, His dad explained to him very clearly that you shouldn't fly too close to the sun or go too close to the water. It's a bad idea. And Icarus didn't go near the water. I mean, that's boring. You can get up close to the water on a ship. Why would you bother? But he was having such a good time flying up and up into the sky that he kind of forgot about the whole sun part. He kept flapping those wings, but soon there weren't any feathers left on them. They'd all melted away. And so Icarus crashed into the sea and drowned. Now, Daedalus was understandably fairly upset, and Icarus landed in the sea near this island. Daedalus went and named it Icaria, and that is a real island, by the way. You can go visit it. Admittedly, the geography there does look a little bit awkward. It makes me think I might have missed part of the story or something like that, but either way, that's not what's important. What is important is that this is where the story of Icarus falling comes from. He fell from the sky because the sun melted the feathers off his wax wings. As a work of literature, it actually has a couple of fairly ubiquitous tropes. For one, it's got this theme of the creator's creation coming back to haunt them. If you think of characters like Victor Frankenstein or Eldon Tyrell from Blade Runner, these are also good examples of this trope. And it's also got this idea of hubris leading to downfall, which obviously there's a lot of examples of that. My personal favourite is Taylor Aranthiel from Enderall, which is a little bit obscure, but anyway.
Miserable, selfish fool!
The important thing is that we now know the key ideas behind this story, but even still, looking at this skin at face value, you'd still have a little bit of trouble working out what it's depicting. If you look at the right pattern, like this one, you might begin to get a sense of it, but if we go to the underlying texture file, it all makes sense. As you can see, we've got wax melting on one side and feathers falling off on the other. Thus, Icarus Fell. And if we go back to this particular skin, you can make it out nice and clearly now. It's still a fairly unusual design. I imagine the person who came up with it probably settled on the final product because they thought it looked cool, but you can't say it doesn't reflect a Greek myth, and that's what this collection is all about. Now, as I said at the start of the video, this is the skin that flew too close to the sun. But it's not just the artwork that makes me say that, I think it reflects its history on the Steam market as well. The Icarus Fell reached its all-time high on the Steam market at September 14, 2015 at $178. I'd imagine a ton of high-end investors probably had inventories full of them, expecting the price to continue going up after the operation ended, and the end of the operation was only 2 weeks off at this point. But a single day later, Valve would nerf the M4A1S, returning the M4A4 to prominence and sending the price of the Icarus Fell, along with every other M4A1S, into an absolute tail dive. I imagine this probably stung a lot of people, a lot of them, but this in and of itself should have simply meant that the skin would stabilise at a new price point and begin behaving normally again, falling in price during operations and increasing in price between them. But the Icarus Fell didn't do this. At least, it didn't do this like you'd expect a popular skin to. Compare the Icarus Fell to the Sunset Storm, for instance. The Icarus Fell moves roughly as many units per day as both Sunset Storms combined, but if we compare their price histories, you can see how the Sunset Storms have held up their value fairly well throughout the operations. These things have been good investments. The Icarus Fell hasn't though. You can see that slope. It might not have been downhill the whole time, but there's been a very strong downward trend. To put it in context, the Sunset Storm was about $24 at the start of Operation Wildfire, and it's about $18 now. The Icarus Fell, on the other hand, was about $100 at the start of Operation Wildfire, and it's about $40 now. So it's fallen hard. That isn't to say that there hasn't been points when it's been possible to make money from investing in them either, and I'm sure some people have, but overall they've been pretty poor. And I have my theory about what's happened here. The Icarus Fell has gotten a lot of attention as an investment. As far as I can tell, it's gotten a lot. If you search the CSGO market subreddit, you will find tons and tons and tons of threads of people talking about investing in this weapon. A lot of people looked into it as an investment opportunity in between operations. It was sort of hyped in a slow motion sort of way. Constant attention from investors buying these skins and holding them long term, which almost certainly forced up the price of the skin. At the same time though, this skin also had a lot of people trading up for them. It was a good trade up skin, it was exciting, it was profitable, you could get it in low floats very easily, and what all these trade up attempts mean is that there's a constant influx of new Icarus Fells onto the market. The thing is though, there was something else on top of this that amplified the effect. You see, if you wanted to trade up for a Poseidon, you'd need to use a restricted Gods and Monsters skin, and that gives you two options, the Icarus Fell or the Kronos. Now, the price of these skins are close to each other at the moment, but for almost all of their history, the Icarus Fell has been by far the most expensive of the two. And the natural consequence of this is that the vast majority of Poseidon trade-ups were done with Kronoses. By implication, this meant that the number of Icaruses on the market kept building up. So we have investors inflating the price of the skin, lots of people trading up for them, and no real avenue for the skins to be lost through trade-ups. Once the upward price pressure from people investing went away in between operations, it's not really surprising that this skin hasn't gone anywhere. To use a flowery metaphor, you could say that it found itself flying too high with nothing to hold it up once its wings melted away. In other words, it's the skin that flew too close to the sun, and it's been a very long and hard way to fall. Ironically fitting, considering its namesake. Anyway, that's pretty much it for this video. If you enjoyed it, please like, comment, subscribe. Otherwise, trust the numbers, not your gut. I'm Heyzeus. Thanks for watching. See ya.